Hello, dear friend. Welcome to tonight's gentle journey into a world like no other, a world of mystery, wonder, and timeless quiet. My name is Tony, and I'm honored to be your guide this evening. Together, we'll walk slowly through shadowed halls and ancient marble rooms, through tides and statues and echoes of memory. This is a story not quite like any other. It is the story of a man who lives in a great house, a house without end, filled with oceans and corridors, with birds and bones and secrets. He calls himself Piranesi. Before we begin, I invite you to pause for a moment. Take a deep, slow breath, and let your body begin to soften. Let the day drift away all its noise and worries, floating off like mist on a quiet sea. You are here now, safe, still, ready to listen. If you find this story calming, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us share more stories like this. Stories filled with wonder, warmth, and rest. And if you'd like, we would love to hear from you in the comments. Your thoughts mean so much to us. Now, settle in. Let your mind open gently, and come with me into the house. Part 1. The House and the Tides. The beauty of the house is immeasurable, its kindness infinite. This is the first line of Piranesi's journal. He writes in small, careful script, day after day, chronicling the rhythms of a world made entirely of marble and sea and sky. The house is vast. Imagine endless halls, lined with statues, some broken, some majestic, some half forgotten. There are clouds that drift through the upper levels. There are tides that rise in the lower halls, salt water filling the corridors like breath. Piranesi knows each shift of tide, each corner of wind. He moves with the house, like a bird on the breeze. It is not simply where he lives. It is part of him. He is not alone. Not quite. There is another, a man he calls the other. The other comes twice a week, always dressed in sharp, strange clothes. He brings notebooks and questions. He speaks quickly, as if time is running out. To Piranesi, he seems almost like a magician, or perhaps a scientist. The other is searching for something powerful, something ancient, and he believes it is hidden somewhere in the house. Piranesi helps him, because that is what he does. He is kind, he is curious, and he believes the house is full of knowledge, if only one knows how to listen. There are 13 skeletons in the house. Piranesi knows them all. He visits them often, bringing them offerings, sweet-smelling seaweed, smooth stones, feathers. He names them and speaks to them gently, as if they were friends. Perhaps, in a way, they are. He is careful in his rituals, careful in his notes. Each day is mapped. each tide recorded, each dream, if he dreams, written down like a message from the sea. But lately, something has changed. A soft unease moves through the lower halls. Strange scraps of paper appear in corners where they should not be. Footprints, too small to be the others, vanish near the water's edge. A tide that should have come late comes early. A bird hovers in a place no bird should fly. The house is shifting, whispering. Piranesi feels it in his bones, in the silence between waves, in the corners of his thoughts, where memories do not quite form. He begins to wonder, is there someone else here? Another presence, hidden in the endless halls. Another voice, long unheard. He asks the other, once. The man stiffens, sharp and cold, and says no. There is no one else. Piranesi, only you and me. But the house seems to disagree. It breathes around him. It hums with secrets, with echoes he cannot trace. Still, Piranesi trusts the house. He trusts its rhythms, its patience, its tides, and he continues his journaling. Because something deep inside him knows. Even when the world is strange, writing makes things real. Writing keeps him anchored. Writing keeps him from vanishing. But before your eyes grow heavy and dreams carry you away, ask yourself, who is hiding in the silent corridors, watching but unseen? What lies behind the door that was never meant to open? And why does Piranesi no longer trust the tides he once understood so well? Let's return soon, together, to explore the answers and uncover the mysteries that wait patiently in the house. Part 2. The Prophet of the Tides. Welcome back, dear traveler. Tonight, the sea rises softly once again in the halls of the house, and the wind carries whispers between its endless pillars. You are safe here. You are welcome here. And Piranesi, wherever he may be at this hour, is surely glad to have your company. Now, let us walk again together, slowly, quietly, into the marble depths, where something old is beginning to stir. Piranesi had always trusted the house. It was a sacred place to him, not made of stone alone, but of meaning, of memory, of some great benevolence too vast to name. Each hall, each statue, each echo of water against marble, they were familiar. They gave his life structure, rhythm, peace. He knew the times of the tides like others, know the hours of the day. He knew when the gulls would wheel in the high arches. He knew the silence of certain corridors and the songs of others. But lately, the house had begun to feel unfamiliar. Not hostile, no, but as if it were holding something back, turning its gaze, hiding its face. Piranesi had begun to notice strange patterns. Twice now, He had found seaweed arranged in unnatural shapes, spirals, lines, a kind of language. Once, he found a footprint, small, human, not his. It vanished into a passage he had never dared to enter before. And then there was the note. It had been tucked behind the antlers of the great elk statue in the Western Hall. Old paper, unfamiliar handwriting. They are lying to you. That was all it said. No name, no explanation. Just 5 words. 5 words that did not belong in the tranquil, ordered world he had always known. He read it again, and again, and the tides inside him, the tides of memory began to shift. When the other arrived that week, as always, he looked irritated. He spoke quickly, barely acknowledging Piranesi's quiet greetings. "There's been interference," he muttered. "I need you to be alert. Watch for signs. Report everything unusual." Understood. Piranesi hesitated. He thought of the footprint, the note, the unease. But something strange and small kept him silent. "Yes," he said, "I understand." But he did not tell him. He began to keep a secret journal instead. A second set of notes, hidden inside a narrow crack in the base of a shattered statue. The drowned angel, he called it. In this journal, he recorded the oddities, the inconsistencies, the moments when his own thoughts seemed not his own. Because now, more than ever, he was starting to feel the fog at the edges of his mind. He was starting to wonder, what had he forgotten? What had been taken? And who had taken it? It was on the 3rd day of the 10th month, just before the arrival of the moontide, that Piranesi heard a voice, not the other, not an echo, a voice, real, human, close. It came from the northwestern vestibule, just beyond the broken pillars where the gulls nested. He froze. The voice was soft, measured, calling, but not to him. Or was it? He followed it quietly, as he always walked, barefoot across the smooth, cool stone, heart quiet, breath slow. But the corridor was empty. No person, no shadow, only a piece of paper pinned beneath a smooth stone. He knelt. Another note. This one said, "Remember who you were before he told you who to be." A chill swept through him, not from the cold, from recognition. He didn't understand the message, but some part of him did. A deeper self, a buried voice, one that had been silenced long ago. And for the first time since he could remember, Piranesi felt something strange stir in his chest. Doubt, not of the house, never the house, but of the other, and perhaps of himself. That night, as he sat beside the tide pool in the Hall of Statues, watching moonlight ripple on the water, he whispered aloud, not to the other, not to the house, but to the air itself. Am I alone here? And the waves, small and silver, whispered back something he could not understand. But he felt it, like a shifting gravity, like the house leaning closer, as if it, too, wanted him to remember. So now, dear friend, as you close your eyes and listen to the hush of tides rolling through long-forgotten halls, ask yourself, why is someone hiding messages in a house with only 2 people? What secret is the other so desperate to protect? And what will Piranesi discover when he follows the voice that calls from beyond the statues? Let us return soon and walk deeper into the house, deeper into the truth. Part 3, the 13th Hall. Welcome back, dear soul. Tonight, the house is quiet, still. The sea sleeps softly in its lower halls, and the birds have tucked their wings beneath marble arches. But you have returned, and Piranesi is waiting. Let us step once more into his world, a world of wonder, and now of secrets. He had always believed there were only 16 halls. He had mapped them carefully, north to south, east to west, watching the tides, naming the statues, marking the quiet places where light pooled gently in corners. 16 halls, known, trusted. But the discovery came unexpectedly. He had followed a ripple of wind, not a breeze from the sea, but a colder, sharper current that seemed to carry a scent unfamiliar to the house. It moved through the 10th vestibule, past the great elephant with the cracked tusks, and slipped between 2 pillars that Piranesi had always believed led to a dead end. Except this time they didn't. There, beyond the marble frame, a passage opened like a secret unfolding. The air was different here, cooler, still. Dust lingered, but not the dust of sea salt and stone. This was older, drier, almost sterile. He stepped forward cautiously, and as he did, he realized this was not one of the 16 halls. This was something else entirely. The 13th hall, he would come to call it, though why 13? He did not yet know. It was tall and narrow, unlike the others. Its floor was not stone, but smooth grey tile. The statues here were wrong, not in shape but in feeling. They showed no gods, no angels or beasts, no majestic figures frozen in grandeur. Instead, there were objects, simple ones, a desk, a pair of shoes, a telephone, each one sculpted in perfect, eerie detail, as if plucked from a world that did not belong to the house at all. He walked slowly past them, shoes too modern, a light switch, a laptop, a mug with a chipped rim, and suddenly Piranesi felt something he did not recognize. A memory, not full, not clear, but sharp, like a blade glancing off the skin. He staggered back. A flash of a different light. A room with painted walls. Voices. Hands holding his arms. And then gone. Just as quickly as it came, he leaned against a statue of the mug. His breath shaking. "I don't understand," he whispered. But the house gave no answer. Only silence and dust. He stayed in the 13th hall longer than he meant to. It was not comfortable, but it pulled at him, with its strange architecture and its quiet dissonance. He found more notes there, not folded like the ones before, but torn as if from a diary. One was stuffed behind the laptop statue, barely visible. It read, "They wiped me clean, left me in the architecture. I am not who I was." Piranesi read it 3 times. The voice was unfamiliar, but something in the words felt like truth. He looked around again, at the statues, the tile, the cold stillness of the hall. Had he written this? Or someone like him? Someone who had once walked the house, but remembered a world beyond it. He placed the note in his satchel and stepped back into the corridor. The familiar sound of the sea greeted him like an old friend. Relief washed through his chest. The familiar halls, the gentle marble, the breath of salt on stone. But he could not unsee what he had seen, or unknow what he now knew. There were more than 16 halls, more than one voice whispering in the dark, and perhaps more than one truth. That night, as he recorded his findings in his secret journal, Piranesi paused before writing the final line. He stared out into the moonlit hall, watching the light ripple across the tide pools. "I was not always who I am," he wrote, his hand trembling slightly. "And the house may not always have been my home. And now, dear listener, as your breath deepens and the hush of the hall surrounds you, ask yourself, who built the 13th hall, and why has it been hidden? Whose memories are bleeding through the marble, like ink through fragile parchment? And if Piranesi was not always Piranesi, then who was he? Let's return again and walk with him as he searches for the truth behind every corner and within himself. Part 4. The Whispering Vestibules. Welcome back, gentle soul. The house has grown quieter tonight. The tide is low, the air is still, but something unseen moves in the distance, like the slow curling of mist across stone. Tonight, we follow Piranesi deeper, into corridors where voices linger, and the truth no longer stands still. Piranesi returned from the 13th hall changed. He said nothing to the other. He smiled as always. answered questions, shared tide data and shell patterns, as if nothing had shifted beneath his feet. But inside, he had begun to keep a new kind of silence, not the peaceful stillness he once held with reverence, but a guarded silence, one that hides, watches, waits. The other continued his visits, punctual, curious, controlling. "You must stay focused," he said. "There are forces at work here, some of them dangerous. If you see anything, anyone, tell me immediately." And then, with narrowed eyes, "You haven't seen anyone, have you?" Piranesi paused. "I've seen only statues," he said softly. "And the sea." The other seemed satisfied, but a shadow passed across his face, and Piranesi noticed it. For the first time, he noticed everything. It began with the whisper. He was in the 12th vestibule, a high, echoing hall shaped like a bell turned on its side. He had often come here to watch the birds, who nested near the ceiling beams in gentle, rhythmic flocks. But that day, there were no birds, only silence, and then a whisper, faint, flickering, like a thought not your own. It came from beneath the floor. He dropped to his knees, pressed his ear to the cold marble. Nothing. Then it came again. Not a voice, exactly, but something beneath a voice. A murmur, a name, almost his name, but not quite. Matthew. He pulled back sharply. That was not his name. He had never heard it in the house. And yet, it struck something in him, like a thread being tugged from far away. The name echoed inside his chest long after the whisper faded. He began to revisit vestibules he had long ignored. The 5th, the 9th, the 11th. Each one held a trace of something, a coldness where there should be warmth, a gap where sound did not echo back, a smell of paper, dust, metal things the house should never hold. And the whispers grew, sometimes behind statues, sometimes in dreams, sometimes just at the edge of hearing, where silence turns strange, and always, always that name. Matthew Rose Sorensen. He wrote it in his journal, then crossed it out, then rewrote it again. Whose name was it? Why did it feel like his? He tried to ask the other. "Have you ever known someone called Matthew?" he asked casually. The other froze. "Why do you ask?" "No reason. I think I dreamed the name." The other's voice sharpened. "Forget it. Dreams mean nothing here." But Piranesi saw it then. The flicker, the lie, and something deeper fear. The other was afraid. But of whom? Of what? Of Piranesi. Days passed. The tides shifted. The birds returned. But the house was no longer quiet. And neither was Piranesi's mind. He began to suspect that the house itself, once his sanctuary, was not showing him everything. There were rooms missing, corridors that folded inward, walls that curved subtly, impossibly, as if designed to confuse. And then, in the vestibule of the winged dancer, he found the scrap of paper, faded ink, worn edges, typed not handwritten. Patient continues to display dissociative behaviors, memory loss consistent with prior exposure. Identity may be recoverable with proper extraction protocol. He stood in silence. The house watched. The whisper returned. This time, it said, "You are not who you think you are." He folded the paper, tucked it inside his satchel, and walked, slowly, carefully, back into the tide-lit halls. That night, he wrote in his journal, "The house holds memories I cannot see. There are truths buried beneath the salt and stone. The other is hiding something from me. And I am no longer certain that I am Piranesi. And now, dear dreamer, as your thoughts drift softly between the waves and walls, ask yourself, why is the other afraid of names, of memories, of truth? Who was Matthew Rose Sorensen? And why does that name awaken something buried in Piranesi? And if the house can lie, what else might it be hiding? Sleep gently now. Let the questions rock you like tides in a marble sea. And when you return, we will go deeper still, into broken statues, fractured minds, and the memory that refuses to stay buried. Part 5. The Flooding of Memory. Welcome back, dear listener. Tonight, the tide is rising, not just in the lower halls of the house, but within Piranesi himself. You've walked with him through silence, through wonder, through questions whispered behind statues. Now, the answers begin to surface, and not all of them are kind. It began with the notebook. He found it tucked beneath the statue he had never noticed before. A statue of a man kneeling in water, arms lifted skyward, tears carved into stone cheeks, a silent scream frozen forever in marble. The notebook was water damaged, but not unreadable. And inside pages and pages of memories, thoughts, observations, names. His name, not Piranesi, but Matthew Rose Sorensen. The words pierced him, not like knives, but like light in a long locked room. Each sentence stirred something beneath the surface. I've agreed to meet Kettley. He claims to have found evidence of a hidden world, a space between realities. It sounds mad, but I'm drawn to it. I need to understand. Kettley, the other, it was him. It had always been him. Page after page unraveled the spell. Descriptions of experiments, of rituals, of altered states, and then I can feel something slipping. My mind isn't staying whole. There are gaps, I dreamed of statues today, endless ones. The journal ended abruptly, but Piranesi could read the spaces between the lines. He had been someone else, a scholar, a seeker. He had entered this world willingly, but he had not stayed willingly. The house began to change, not in its shape, but in how he saw it. Where once there had been beauty, there was now strangeness. Where there had been kindness, now indifference. He walked through the vestibule of the giants, past the statues of grieving angels and blind kings, and whispered aloud, "Did I choose this?" The echoes answered with silence, but within him a storm gathered. He remembered now not fully, but enough. The other had used him, had trapped him, had stolen his name and let time erase him, until only Piranesi remained. Piranesi, the man who trusted the house, who worshipped its silence, who never asked what lay beyond. Now he was both Matthew and Piranesi, the man who had come searching for knowledge, and the man who had become a part of the house's forgotten echo. He confronted the other. It was not dramatic. There were no raised voices, just two men standing beneath a dome of white stone. While sea mist clung to their clothes. "You lied to me," Piranesi said. The other Kettley frowned. "You're confused. This world isn't kind to memory, but it remembers me," Piranesi said softly. "And now so do I." There was a pause. Then Kettley smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "I gave you peace. You were happier here. You were nothing before, nothing but noise. I was a person," Piranesi replied, "and you took that from me." The silence that followed was thick, like fog on the tide. Neither man spoke again. Kettley turned and walked away, his footsteps vanishing into the sea-slick marble, and Piranesi stood alone, but no longer lost. That night, he sat in the upper halls, where clouds drifted through the rafters, and wrote in his true journal, "I was not born in the house. I was made by it, or unmade, but I remember now, and I will not forget again." He closed the book, lay back on the cold floor, and watched the sky through broken beams, and for the first time in a long time, he wondered what existed beyond the house. What world waited for him on the other side of memory? And now, dear traveller, as the tides of your own thoughts rise and fall, ask yourself, what would you become if your memories were taken? Can peace given through lies ever be true peace? And if Piranesi was once Matthew, which of them will walk out of the house? Rest now. Let the questions settle like silt beneath calm water. For ahead lies the path of return, and the final choice that must be made. Part 6. The Door Between Worlds. Welcome back. Dear listener, the journey has brought us far, through quiet halls, shattered memories, and truths carved into the bones of the house. And now we have arrived at a threshold, the place where one world ends, another begins. Tonight, we walk with Piranesi to the door he was never meant to find. The air had changed, even before he found the door. Piranesi could feel something in the marble beneath his feet, a hum, low and restless, as though the house itself knew what was coming. He had been following the birds. They flew strange patterns now, not circles, not spirals, but lines, paths, as if they were tracing routes he had forgotten how to read. He followed them north, beyond the sea vestibules and the hall of the shattered whale, until he came to a part of the house he had never mapped. A narrow stair carved directly into the wall, and at the top of that stair, a door, unlike anything else in the house. No carvings, no statues, no sea air. It was metal, cold, set into stone like a wound. Piranesi stood before it for a long time, his hand hovering just inches from its surface. He didn't know how he knew, but he knew this was the way out. He turned back, not because he was afraid, but because he needed to say goodbye. He returned to the places that had once held his entire world. He visited the statues, the woman carrying a beehive, the two children embracing, the soldier with a book in his lap. He visited the skeletons, offered them seaweed and whispered thanks. They had kept him company through years he could no longer count. He even visited the other. Kettley was weaker now, angry, desperate. "You think you're free," he sneered, "but the world out there will never understand you. You belong here. You are this place." But Piranesi only looked at him, not with hatred, not with pity, with quiet clarity. "No," he said, "I belong to myself." And then he walked away. The second time he stood before the door, he was not afraid, but he was not certain either. What lay beyond it? The world of Matthew Rose Sorensen. Noise, lights, names, pain. Or was it something else entirely? He reached forward, placed his hand on the cold metal, and the door opened. Light poured through. Not the pale, silvery light of the house, but something warmer, brighter. He stepped out slowly. The ground beneath him was not marble, but pavement. There were buildings, cars, trees, people. They looked at him strangely, but not unkindly. A woman approached him, her voice cautious but gentle. "Are you Matthew?" He paused, and then, with a voice both old and new, he said, "Yes, but I've been someone else, too." She led him into a small room, offered him tea, listened to his story, Most did not believe him. They called it trauma, disassociation, hallucination. But one or two listened a little longer, and when he spoke of statues and tides, of endless halls and whispers in the stone, their eyes grew quiet. He began to live again, not as Matthew, not fully, but not only as Piranesi. He was both, a man who had once loved books and lectures, and a man who had once named the sea with reverence. He wrote, he walked, he lived quietly, and sometimes, in the early hours before dawn, he would close his eyes and still feel the house in his bones. He no longer needed to return, but it had never truly left him. And now, dear friend, as your breath slows and your body softens, ask yourself, what would you do if the door appeared before you? Would you step through or stay in the world that shaped your soul? And when you return to yourself, how much of the journey will you carry with you? Rest well, for the final pieces are falling into place, and when next we meet, we will uncover the last truth Piranesi has yet to face. Part 7, The Final Journal. Welcome back, dear friend. The journey has brought you far. You have walked the marble halls, heard the whispers, faced the mirror of memory, and now we sit beside Piranesi once more, as he writes the final pages of the journal that kept him alive. Through tides and silence and forgetting, let us listen, gently, together. He had been home for some time now. Not the house, not the endless palace of sea and stone, but this world, the world of people, of names, of clocks and questions, of things that move too fast. At first, he felt like a visitor inside his own skin. He watched people speak, laugh, worry, as if through glass. He answered their questions politely. He accepted their help, but he lived, still, half inside the house. And perhaps he always would. He kept a journal again, a new one, not for tide patterns, not for cataloguing statues, but for thoughts, for feelings, for moments that could slip away if not written down. He called it the final journal, though he knew it might not truly be the last. Inside it, he wrote, "There are two of me, one who lived with the statues and called the sea by name, and one who once gave lectures, wrote essays, drank coffee in libraries. Matthew Rose Sorensen is real, but so is Piranesi, and I will no longer choose between them. I am both. I am neither. I am someone new." He closed the book and breathed deeply. It was the first time he had written without confusion. Not to prove who he was, not to remember, but to accept. Sometimes, in dreams, he returned to the house, but not as a prisoner, as a guest, a friend, He would walk the halls barefoot, as he always had, whisper greetings to statues, feel the tide lap gently at his ankles, and in the dream, the house was no longer empty. There were others, walking, wondering, listening. He was not alone, and neither were they. In waking life, he kept to simple things. He walked in parks. He watched birds and named them. He spoke softly to rivers, as he once had to sea currents. He smiled more often now, not because he had forgotten the past, but because he no longer needed to escape it. He visited the library again, the real one, the one with shelves and soft lamps and people who whispered out of habit. He found books on ancient places, on alternate realities, on minds that fracture and reform, and in one, he found a line that made him pause. What is remembered lives. What is named endures. He copied it into his journal, underlined it twice. People still asked him, sometimes, what happened in those years he was gone. Do you remember, they would say, gently, and he would smile, a little sadly, a little proudly. I remember everything, he would say, but I do not remember it like you would. That was enough for most. They nodded. They didn't press further. And for those who truly wanted to understand, he would hand them a notebook. Let them read. Let them walk the house through his words. Let them decide what was real. He never stopped writing. Not because he feared forgetting, but because the world, any world, was too beautiful not to write about. Even this one, especially this one. And now, dear dreamer, as you rest your thoughts upon the soft edge of sleep, ask yourself, if you had to choose between forgetting pain or remembering who you truly are, which would you choose? If the world you built in your loneliness had its own beauty, could you ever truly leave it behind? And if you wrote your life down, page by page, what would remain when the forgetting ends? Sleep now. Let your dreams carry you into memory, into meaning. For there is one final part of this story to tell, the part where all paths meet, and the tide brings everything home. Part 8. The House Remains. Welcome, one last time, dear traveler. Tonight, the tide is still. The stars hang softly in place. The house, though distant, is listening. This is the final chapter, a gentle closing of the great marble doors. But some doors, once opened, never truly shut. Let us walk slowly, together, through these last halls. Let us leave no shadow behind. Piranesi, or perhaps now simply the man lives quietly, not in the house, not in the echoing chambers of tide and statue, but in a world filled with voices, clocks, seasons. He has not forgotten where he came from. He has not rejected the name Matthew Rose Sorensen, but he no longer clings to it. He walks between names now, between stories. Some days he is the scholar, the thinker, the writer. Others, he is the one who kneels by the river and whispers thanks to the water. And always, he remembers. Once, someone asked him, "Was the house real?" He smiled. "Yes," he said, with calm certainty. "It was the most real place I've ever known." They waited for an explanation. He gave them none. How could he explain the way the statues had watched over him, the way the sea had sung him to sleep, the way the silence had spoken more truth than any world filled with noise? No, it was not for explanation. It was for remembrance. And he carried that remembrance like a quiet light in a world that had forgotten how to be still. He dreams, still, in his sleep. He walks the house, not lost, not searching, just walking. The halls greet him like old friends. The statues nod gently in his passing. The tides touch his feet and ask no questions. He wakes from these dreams with tears in his eyes, not of sorrow, but of recognition. He once belonged fully to the house, and part of him always will. But he has learned a rare truth. You can leave the place that made you and still carry it within you. One evening, he returns to the coast, to a quiet place where the sea meets stone. He watches the horizon, and as the wind brushes past him, he speaks aloud not to anyone in particular, but to the memory that shaped him. "I will not come back." He pauses. "But I will never stop walking your halls. You are carved into me." And with that, he lets the tide take the last page of his journal, watches it float outward, until it becomes a tiny dot on the silver water. That night, the house sleeps. Its halls are quiet once more. The statues hold their silent vigil. The sea breathes in and out, and in the farthest vestibule, where no footsteps have touched in years, a gull lands softly beside a half-open notebook. It is blank, ready for someone new. And now, dear listener, as you settle into your final breath of this story, ask yourself, what place lives within you, even if you've left it behind? Who are you now? And who were you before forgetting set in? And if you found a door in the quiet, would you dare open it? Thank you for walking these halls with us. Thank you for listening to the story of Piranesi, of Matthew, of the house. If this story has left even a single ripple in your soul, we hope it stays with you, like a tide that always returns, soft, slow, eternal. Sleep now, gentle soul. The house remains, and somewhere in the echo of stone and sea, you do, too. That brings us to the end of our story. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you again for future stories.